It's the Ed Bernstein Show, Home Edition. Now, here's your host, Ed Bernstein.
Hi, welcome to our show, and we're back again to talk with judges so you can make an intelligent decision when you go out and vote this November. A little bit later in the show, Bulla, the Court of Appeals judge, will be with us. But right now, a longtime district court judge and friend, Rob Baer, is here. And Rob, you have quite an interesting background. You took a kind of a different path to becoming a judge than other people on the bench.
Well, that's true. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, but my path, in my mind, starts right from the beginning, where I've been a pretty lucky guy. I started my life in an orphanage, and I was adopted by two wonderful parents who, as fate would have it, both served time as well in the United States Army. My mom served in the Women's Army Corps back in the late 1950s. And my father ended up spending 27 years in the United States Army as a military police officer. And he passed away in 1995, and he's buried in Arlington National Cemetery.
Oh, wow.
So, when I got out of law school, I did have a job and offer for a job at a big law firm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But I decided not to really take that job. What I decided to do, as a surprise pretty much to my dad, was to apply for, and ultimately I got accepted, to be a member of the U.S. Army myself in the U.S. Army JAG Corps. I was an attorney there. It's really cool and an honor to be a captain in the United States Army. I'd signed up for 3 years. I served a little bit more than 4 years. Because I loved serving our country, and I loved being a trial lawyer. They threw me to the wolves pretty much. I was in front of military court-martial juries all the time for a little bit more than 4 years. Well, then I had heard that Nevada was a land of opportunity, and probably, Ed, just like it has gone for you, we've been lucky guys. Nevada has presented a lot of opportunity to me. I came here in 1993. And as fate would have it, I was lucky enough to get the job as the chief lawyer for the State Bar of Nevada. That's a position known as the Bar Counsel for the State Bar. Viewers might wonder, well, what do you do if you're the chief lawyer for the State Bar of Nevada? Well, I was a prosecutor, essentially. The viewers might have heard where perhaps, unfortunately, lawyers, when they've done things that they shouldn't have done, they get suspended, or in worst case scenarios, disbarred from the practice of law. Well, I was the lawyer. I was the chief prosecutor. I was the one that prosecuted those cases on behalf of the Supreme Court of Nevada and the board that governs the State Bar. Well, believe it or not, for 17 years. I had that job for 17 years. Then the Nevada legislature, in its wisdom, decided to create Department 32 of the district court. And a lot of people asked me to consider running for judge in 2010. I thought about it. I had a great office. Everybody who had been in my office from day one of the 17 years at the bar, well, they were all still with me. And it was a tough decision to think about running for judge. But I'll share with you. My mom, who's 88, still alive, still in the small town in Pennsylvania I grew up in, who probably watches too much Judge Judy. Well, she's still alive now, like I said, and back then I figured, well, if I run for judge and I get elected, it'll make her proud. And that was the one thing that convinced me to run for judge. So I got elected in 2010. The investiture was wonderful, where you get sworn in as a judge over at the government center. I sort of asked a justice on the Supreme Court, a guy named Mike Cherry, to work with me to surprise my mom, who was in attendance at that swearing in. We had gotten a nice portrait similar to the one behind me on the wall here. And at the end of the ceremony, he pulled it out as he had it hidden and handed it to my mom after I was sworn in as judge. Well, that showed me that's exactly the reason why it made sense to do it, because I can't imagine doing anything better for both my dad and my mom, serving in the Army and then having my mom be lucky enough to watch her son get sworn in as district judge. But anyway, the legislature created that Department 32. It's been a department of the district court for 10 years. I've been the judge in that department the whole time. I've been the only judge to ever be in Department 32. It's been an all-civil department, and I have really enjoyed being the civil court judge because it really is a challenge to me and to anyone that comes in a civil courtroom. As you know, in doing personal injury law, the civil law presents complexities that are challenging, and we welcome that.
You know, it says a lot about your mom and the way she raised you. Not easy for anybody in an adoption situation. Not easy for the kids, not easy for the parents. Takes some special people to make it work. And then to, I hate to use the word repay, it's not the right word, but for you to, demonstrate so much love back to your mom, after she had given you so much, it's very touching. It really is.
Well, the one thing that hit me, and I think actually hits a lot of adoptees, and I was a younger child when it hit me, and I kept it with me my whole life. That people adopted you really wanted you to be their child because they go through a screening process. For me, back in the early 1960s, when they adopted me, they had gone through a 4-year screening process. It was rather intense to be able to qualify to adopt a child, a baby. I was 6 months old when they brought me home. So, the fact that they wanted you to be their child, in this case, their son, and raise the son, it was always something where the primary motivation, it might sound sappy, but I'm just telling you, the primary motivation in my whole professional life and my life as a person was to make them both proud of them.
And you certainly have done that in so many different ways. Have you ever handled any adoptions as a judge?
No, those are handled exclusively by family court judges.
Right.
And I never practiced any family law. I admire those that do, but my career path was one as in criminal court, and then the lawyer for the state bars I've described, and now as a district judge.
Mm-hmm. When you're in the military and you're dealing with a different area of the law than what you're working with now, is there one significant difference that you've noticed?
Well, it's interesting. I thought that there would be a very significant difference as between the military trial courts and the civil trial court that I preside over, specifically the juries themselves. I thought there would be a tremendous difference in that regard because the military juries are made up of senior officers in the military. And those are pretty strapped individuals, and they're all college educated. And, the trials were high-level intellectual experiences in front of military officers sitting there in their Class A uniform. But, I got to tell you, the Nevada public has proven that initial thought wrong because my juries, that come into the room, the juries we end up with after the jury selection process are just as smart, just as sophisticated, whether they have a college education or not. Frankly, life experience sometimes is even more important than the college experience or, than postgraduate experience. I'm so proud of what's happened in Department 32, maybe the 50 jury trials or however many I've had in the 10 years. I'd ask your viewers to take a look at judgerobbear.com. That's a website that we all have in an election cycle. And it might sound kind of trite, hey, look at my website. Normally, I wouldn't even mention something like that because everybody has websites and candidates have websites. But for me, I will tell you, there's something different about the website that I have in that I've been lucky enough just since the last election cycle, say over the last 5 years or so, to receive a number of unsolicited letters, emails, and handwritten letters from jurors, from those that have served on my juries. I think they say it better than anybody could because these are people just like your viewers, members of the public who didn't know me from Adam's house cat, really. I mean, who then come in and end up on a jury for a week or 2 or 4 or 6 sometimes. So so they wrote me some letters, and that's probably what I'm most proud of. So I put those on judgerobbear.com. But getting back to your question, the juries in Nevada do a great job. It's a highly intellectual mission for them. Actually, getting back to the story about my past, if I could, I'd like to tell you something I say to the maybe 50 members of the public or so when they first come into the courtroom, if that's okay.
Sure.
This little story sort of evolved in me over the 10 years I've been a judge. Here's how it goes. I told you my dad's buried in Arlington National Cemetery. And so when the jury comes in, typically it's about 45 or 50 members of the public that come into the courtroom at Department 32. And, I like to do something to inspire them because I know they're missing time away from work and their families and what have you. So what I tell them is, as trying to be a good son, I feel as though I should take my mom on over to Arlington National Cemetery about once every year and a half or so. And so, of course, since 1995, I've been doing that because that's where my dad's buried. And so a couple years into being a district judge, I was there at Arlington with my mom. It was a beautiful day. I was looking at the rolling hills of Arlington, those beautiful white headstones, and all of a sudden it hit me. There's a lot of people that fought, sometimes died, just to give us all the rights we just get to have as Americans. And this is one of them, the right to trial by jury. It's a very unique allowance. It's a very unique thing to just get because you're a citizen or just being here. The right to trial by jury. The Nevada Constitution says that the right to trial by jury shall remain forever. That's what it says in our Constitution. It also says the right to trial by jury is secured in the United States Constitution. But again, this is just one of the things we get to have because a lot of people fought, sometimes died, to give us all the rights that we have here in the United States. So, when I was there with my mom, like I say, a couple years into the judgeship, I saw that, hit me. And ever since then, so probably for about the last 8 years or so, I tell the 50 members or so of the public about that. And you can actually see a visible change sometimes in their attitude when it hits people, the importance of serving on a jury and the fact that we get to have that uniquely in some ways in this country as a right. So thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah, no, it's appreciated. We have like another minute or so left, but I thought you were being modest when you were talking about your background as a bar counsel, because I want our viewers to know that what you dealt with was really assuring the public that lawyers that work in Nevada were of the highest ethical caliber. And because of that, the bar counsel himself must be beyond reproach when it comes to ethics and morality and obeying and following the law. You did it for, what 17 years? Is that what you said?
17 years.
And had a perfect reputation in administering fairly those ethical requirements to all the lawyers, all the judges, all the members of the bar. And you've done the same thing as a district court judge. And, we got about 30 seconds left, Rob. Why should somebody vote for you? Give me 30
Well, I think as an elected official, you got to do a lot of community service. I'm real proud that I've been involved with the high school mock trial team, the ATEC team. They won the state championship a couple years ago. We rehearsed their mock trial in my courtroom. I've taught at the community college to paralegals, those that want to work in the legal field as paralegals. I was given an award a few years ago as the award of judicial excellence. I've just been a lucky guy.
Yeah.
And even more than all that, Ed, I got to tell you, I really appreciate the friendship that you've given me over the years. You talk about ethics, you talk about a guy who has a good heart. Well, I never would say much of that about myself, but I know it about you, and I appreciate your friendship.
Thank you, Robin. And I should say he's really married to a beautiful woman. So, hey, it's good chatting with you. And viewers, will be right back with Appellate Court Judge Bonnie Bulla. My daughter Dana fought a long battle with Crohn's disease before passing last year.
It's our goal to help the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation find a cure for this horrible disease.
Join Max and I in scoring our goal to find a cure. Welcome back. With me now is Appellate Court Judge Bonnie Bulla, and you have quite an interesting background, not only in private practice and litigation, but also you were something known as a discovery commissioner.
Brad.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about a discovery commissioner is that you essentially touch every case and every lawyer, right? I mean, you're involved in everything. What do you do as a discovery commissioner?
Well, first of all, it's so nice to be here and see you today. And discovery commissioner is one of those really officious sounding titles, but when a case starts in the district court by complaint and after an answer is filed, but before trial, there's this period of time, sometimes short, sometimes longer, where the parties try to figure out what their case is about and perhaps more importantly, what the other side's case is about. And there are a variety of ways they can do this. They can ask questions, and sometimes it's a very formal type of question called an interrogatory. They can take depositions of witnesses. They can go inspect premises where an accident has occurred. And they're doing this to find out more information. Well, sometimes there are or were disputes as to either what type of information they could obtain or who they could talk to or what documents they could have. And when the lawyers did not agree on the resolution of those issues.
Which is all the time, I should say.
Well, I was going to try not to say that, but many times they would come to me and I was the one that would resolve those issues. So I learned to be a really good problem solver during those 12 years.
Yeah, and I have to tell our viewers, it's the most difficult job at the courthouse, and the hardest working job in the courthouse. Subsequent to that, well, now you're on the Court of Appeals. So a number of years ago, we didn't have a Court of Appeals. It's relatively new, and a lot of people still don't understand what the Court of Appeals function may be. And secondarily, you want to talk about how you got onto the Court of Appeals?
I was appointed to the Court of Appeals by Governor Sisolak early last year. In order to receive that appointment, I went through judicial selection. So I had to submit a pretty lengthy application. I had to go through a background check, and I was interviewed by the Nevada Judicial Selection Commission. And then the commission sent 3 names to the governor. The governor interviewed us, and I was very honored to be his selection for the court. But as a result of that, I do stand for election this year in 2020 because I did go through the appointment process. And I've been on the court. Well, I'm coming up on 1.5 years on the court. And it's been wonderful. I love my job. It's a very challenging job. As discovery commissioner, I handled civil cases, very complex ones, very routine ones. But now I get to handle criminal cases and family law cases as well. So that's really exciting for me, especially to be able to learn new things at this time. It's wonderful.
Our appellate court has 3 appellate court judges. When you were the discovery commissioner, I mean, it's kind of like, I know people could appeal your decisions, but basically you made the decision alone. Now, as an appellate court judge, you have two partners. The three of you have to make a decision and work collaboratively, I guess. I mean, so what is the big difference for you? Is it do you enjoy that more, or is it now you don't get to be the sole decider? What is the difference?
Well, I think you've really said it quite well. Before, I was making the decision myself, and I could fix a lot of the issues in a case early on because I was really on the front lines dealing with the discovery issues before the case went to trial. On the appellate court, I can't make those decisions, nor do I by myself. I have my two colleagues with me, and we reach a decision. It's either 3-0, we all agree, or it's 2-1, and the 2-1 is the majority decision. But what's interesting about being on the appellate court is I'm looking at the case now after it has gone through the trial process or after its trial's been completed. So before, as discovery commissioner, I was looking at it early on, and now I'm looking at it after trial. And there is a limitation placed on the appellate court of what we can really look at, whatever's in the record. And the issues are very discrete issues on appeal. So even if I might have done something differently below, that's really not the issue. The issue is whether or not the lower court handled the case properly below. The appellate court is called a court of error, which basically means we're trying to decide when we review an appeal whether or not the district court or the lower court properly applied a rule of procedure or rule of evidence or statute. And therefore, our focus is pretty narrow in that regard.
Yeah. For a number of years, it seemed like most of 40 plus years I've been practicing law, Nevada is one of the few states that didn't have an intermediary court of appeals. I mean, it used to be we had district court, and cases got appealed, they went to the Supreme Court. And then, so the appellate court process is relatively new. And I guess they're still, finding the balance in a lot of ways. But how would you describe to our viewers, how does it get decided what cases go to the appellate court and what cases you take and what cases the Supreme Court may or may not take?
In our system, because we're a relatively small state, so we don't have what most people would traditionally think of as a court of appeals. All of the appeals in the lower courts go to the Supreme Court. And it's the Supreme Court that makes the decision as to which cases the appellate court is going to hear. And this is actually decided by rule. We have a rule of appellate procedure that governs this decision. Basically, there are certain types of cases we don't hear. Like, for example, we do not hear death penalty cases. We do not hear termination of parental rights cases. But other than that, we hear a high volume of cases in the area of criminal, civil, and family law. We also hear emergency writs, which seem to come in at 4:45 on Friday afternoon. So those are the types of cases the appellate court hears. Once we make our decision, 3-0 or 2-1, either party then can ask for a rehearing before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court can decide whether or not to rehear the case. If there is no rehearing, then the case goes back to the lower court to handle in accordance to whatever decision we have made.
And when you deliberate a decision, do you have? Do you do it individually? Each of your appellate court judges individually come up with an analysis, or do you really get into a room and have a discussion between the three of you?
Well, we handle a really high volume of cases, and just for example, in calendar year 2019, we resolved over 1,150 cases. So the three of us aren't handling all of that individually. We have our staff I have 2 law clerks and a chambers administrator. My colleagues have the same. We have 5 criminal lawyers, 5 civil lawyers who help us prepare these cases. So if a case comes out of our chambers, we are individually handling that case, preparing it, coming up with a recommendation perhaps, but we do not make a decision on a case until all 3 of us sit down together and make that decision. So we are making it the decision on each appeal together. And sometimes, obviously, we have oral argument, and then we sit down and we make the decision together. So we do make it together. But certainly cases that come from our chambers, or even cases that come from staff that they've helped prepare for us, they may make a recommendation. But again, a decision is not made until all 3 of us are together and we make that decision.
Yeah, and I know all 3 of you, and you're all 3 of you are, for lack of a better term, I mean, you're all easy to get along with. Always, you always seem like the 3 of you are all reasonable people that can sit in a room and agree to disagree and come out of it all, feeling good about the experience.
I think for the majority of the cases that we've worked on together, we are pretty much 3-0. I mean, we may be 2-1 occasionally,
right.
But we work well together and we work really hard. This is a 7-day-a-week job sometimes.
Yeah. We only have a minute or 2 left, Judge. Why don't you spend that minute or 2 talking about, why you came to Las Vegas and why somebody should vote for you?
This past summer, I will have been in Las Vegas for 33 years. I moved here in 1987. I took and passed the bar the same year and went to work for a firm called Vargas & Bartlett as a young associate. I wanted to come and get some good experience, and I ended up staying and making a life here. I have spent my legal career working very hard, learning the law, applying the law fairly and in a non-discriminatory manner. And I've been on the court now almost 1.5 years, and I would really like the opportunity to continue on the court and work hard for the people of Nevada.
Yeah, thank you. And I can attest, because I said it earlier, she's one of the hardest working judges anywhere in the state. So thank you so much, Judge Bonnie Bulla, and good luck in the election.
Thank you.
This is your first election, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's my first election.
How's it? 30 seconds. How's the experience of running for election? You enjoying it? I know it's weird with the virus.
It's been challenging. I really had to think about that when I applied for the job because I knew I would be running for election. The political part came with the job. I watched so many reruns of West Wing that I was confident that I would be just fine. It's been wonderful. I've gotten to meet some wonderful people.
Thank you so much.